Hi everyone, I'm Qingyu Meng from VU Amsterdam, and today I present our work on StoryMI, a multi-agent framework that makes large language model dialogue steerable for motivational interviewing. Now, let me start with the problem. Modern language models can produce dialogue that sounds like a therapist, but sounding like one is not the same as practicing like one, as real motivational interviewing rests on three things. It is grounded in a specific client situation. It follows a strategy that depth as its conversation upholds, and it can be evaluated in a way clinicians actually trust. A model that is only fluent has none of this. So fluent dialogue on its own is not enough for counseling or therapy's purposes. We, we frame that gap as three concrete barriers. The first barrier is a lack of situational grounding. And our answer for this is to expand the clinical questionnaire into a full client history, which gives us 1,000 grounded client backgrounds. The second barrier is the absence of dynamic strategy control. Our answer for this is a multi-agent loop. An MI code is therapist and client steered by an interaction manager agent. The third barrier is misaligned evaluation. And our answer for this is a three-level protocol that runs from lexical metrics through MI-specific behavior and up to George and human ratings. Here is the pipeline of our framework. We start from a clinical questionnaire and expand it into a situational story. So each client has a concrete background rather than a generic one. That story sits the client agent. The therapist agent then replies, and every therapist's utterance is tagged with one of 12 MI behavior codes. Sitting above both agents is the interaction manager agent, which tracks the macro level strategy and steers the next move turn by turn. The finished dialogue is then scored at all three evaluation levels. The key idea from this is that strategy is controlled across the whole conversation, not just prompted once at the start. This pipeline produces a sizable dataset. We generate 6,000 multi-turn dialogues, over 830,000 utterances, all grounded in 1,000 fixed questionnaire and story pairs that span 30 DSM-5 symptom domains. Every therapist terms carries one of 12 MI codes, and the dialogues run from roughly 13 to 26 terms each. Our evaluation has three escalating tiers, and each answers a different question. The lexical tier uses entropy, distinctive, perplexity, and self-biometrics, and it asks whether the language is even diverse enough to matter. The second MI-specific tier measures open question ratio, reflection depth, count entropy, to name a few. And it asks whether the therapy actually behaves like an MI clinician. The third tier brings in an LM as a judge together with human experts, rating 6 dimensions on 1 to 5 Likert scale, and it asks whether the real question, does this sound like therapy to a clinician? These are the 5 macro strategy targets the interaction manager agent watches while it steers. It keeps the open question ratio at above 70%, the reflection ratio at above 1/2, and setting the complex reflection ratio to a high level, strategy adherence at above 80%, and try to keep the code entropy balanced, so the conversation uses full range of MI codes instead of collapsing into one or two. These 5 numbers are exactly what the manager optimizes the regeneration. Now this brings us to our first research question. Can multiple MI agents actually simulate conversations that adhere to MI strategies? This table reports the strategy metrics across all 6 backbone models. The headline is that 4 of the 6 clear the 80% strategy adherence threshold: GPT, OpenChat, Gemma, and Qwen. Llama and Fire fall short at 53, while Qwen leads on reflection depth and on complex reflection. The message is that the interaction manager agent pulls most backbones onto the MI playbook. Still under the first research question, we find a clear structural relationship that the higher a model's open question ratio, the higher its human empathy rating. As we can see, only 2 models cross the open question threshold, Phi at 95 and Llama at 92, and those 2 receive the highest human empathy scores accordingly. The other 4 models all sit well below 30% open questions, and they receive corresponding lower empathy. This lines up with MI theory because open questions in MI signal an accepting, exploratory stance, and human readers pick up on that. Our second research question asks how the situational story and MI codes each shape conversation quality. So we update them on GPT. We can see that removing the MI codes is a dramatic one, as strategy adherence drops from 81% to 64%. It loss of nearly 70 points, while removing the stories that cost about 5 points of code entropy, which is the behavioral diversity. Removing both is worst of all, with adherence down to 61. So the two components carry complementary signal. The MI codes carry adherence, and the stories carry diversity. Our third research question is whether an LMS charge aligns with human annotators, and our answer for this is only partly. On the observable dimensions, the judge agrees with humans. Reasoning tests and therapeutic progress both show significant positive correlation, but on the subtle dimensions, such as coherence, naturalness, empathy, and adherence, the correlation is not very high, even though the human raters agree strongly among themselves. The practical message is that an LMS judge can screen dialogue development at scale, but human experts are still led at that stage to validate therapeutic fidelity. To make that concrete, here is the same client setting with and without the MI codes. With the full StoryMI on the left, the therapist reflects the client's emotional state, then asks an open question, inviting the client to explore. Without the MI code on the right, the therapist drops straight into directive problem-solving advice. Same model and same client, but the strategy control is what keeps the therapist in an MI stance rather than slipping into giving instructions directly. To wrap up for now, we have three things for takeaway. First, grounding, strategy, and evaluation are all necessary, and none of them alone is enough for generating good motivational interviewing dialogues. Second, the MI codes are what carry strategy adherence. And third, current MI judges miss empathy and adherence dimensions, so more human reviews is still required for these dimensions specifically. That is all for today. Thank you very much for your attention.